if you have 50 clubs in the country and those 50 DJs are playing for a couple of thousand people every night, and they have some kind of power and a little bit of know-how of how to make a record or put a beat underneath something, they could take this a cappella, make their own version. The problem is you're promoting the record, but you're not promoting the sales, because I want that version that the guy in Detroit is playing. Oh no, I want that version the guy in LA is playing. When I gave you that double pack that said you got to get East Move, Hurley, or Maurice, that's what's in the marketplace to buy.
So today is Friday, January 3rd, 2025. Who are we speaking with?
Johnny D. DeMiro.
So thank you for a fantastic first interview. It was great. We talked about Henry Street and its evolvement. Today, I wanted to double click specifically on remixes and the remix era.
Yes.
And we'll get into specifically like the tracks you remixed. But let's, I guess at a macro level, what would you say your remix legacy is?
Without a doubt, the top three would be Everything But the Girl Missing, Tori, Amos, Professional Widow, and I mean the Bucketheads is, I wouldn't say remix, but those are the three biggest records as far as my involvement. But you know, there were hundreds I've done, you know, from Bette Midler to, you know, Wu-Tang Clan. I mean, I did a Pharrell mix, which most people don't realize, of Kid Rock Cowboy, which was a promo only 12-inch. That was like Pharrell when he was just about to explode and wanted to get into the rock world. And he did me a ridiculous favor. I think he charged me like 10% of what his rate was at the time.
Let's talk about the remix. So at the time, remixes were seen as a new way to extend the life of a pop song. Then they created a Grammy category for it as well. I think Frankie Knuckles won their first remix category.
Yes.
I guess today, do major labels still invest in remixes or not?
No, I think the technology basically put me out of a job and a lot of people in the business. I think, you know, there was a process. You know, the remix thing, I took it very seriously when I was doing it for years. And as a music lover, as a DJ, as a person reading credits and stuff, I kind of got it and understood it. So when I got the job, when I had an opportunity to actually be that person in the driver's seat, I was constantly thinking about, how is this record going to get played? How is it going to get the most exposure? So if it's a black record that we know is going to be played in the black clubs, how are you going to get it into the white gay clubs? And I was always, you know, in my head, that was always what the spread was about. Because obviously, if there's a Chicago house record that's being made by Mr. Fingers, it's going to be played in those house clubs. But how are you going to get that into like a different genre? So that was always, to me, that was the challenge and the art of the remix. And I took it I still to this day, I take it very seriously. It's not just just pick anybody up and do a remix. You know, I watch some of these things I'm not going to mention, but, you know, I watch some of these podcasty things of remixes being interviewed, and I call it house music amnesia, because either they have like a 10% recollection of what really went down, or for whatever reason they're just on some other mode. One of the first things I did before I got to Atlantic was Everything But the Girl Missing, and that came about in you know, that's a really cool story in the way that Rich Christina is one of my closest friends. He was the person basically running the dance department in Atlantic. And he's the guy with Craig Kalman who brought me in to replace him, because he wanted to move into A&R completely. He wanted to leave promotion. And while Rich was at the company, I was at a company called SIN, Street Information Network, doing promotion. But I had started my label. I was doing production. I was very wired at the time. From here to the UK, like I had shit. John Robinson on WBLS every day, Funkmaster Flex at night. genres, black, white, gay, straight. It was colorless, didn't matter. It was just all about knowing the music, getting it played, and moving shit around. And Rich called me up and said, "Listen, we got this group, Everything But the Girl." And I knew about them, like a folk group. My sister knew about them. He's like, "Want to get a mix done." At the time, I was real tight with Kenny and Todd, with those guys probably, 5 nights a week. And Todd was, Todd instantly came on the scene and just took over the club world. And I said, "Yo, Todd, this is like, great opportunity for you." And it wasn't a lot of money. It wasn't. And Todd was getting really decent money. He had done a couple of bigger remixes, but nothing had. He was big in the underground. He didn't take over. This was the record that put him, through the stratosphere. And he did the mix, and he was like basically did me a favor. Rich submitted it at Atlantic Records. The group really didn't like it. Atlantic kind of didn't know what was about. But the inner part that nobody talks about with this story is they were about to be dropped. Nobody knew that this group was about to be dropped. They were signed from somebody in the Warner system, dropped them at Atlantic. Atlantic was like basically a rock label. They were like, "What are we doing with these people? They're making folk kind of records." It's just like they couldn't get them on the radio. Nobody gave a shit about them in the video world. So this was kind of like, all right, whatever. We'll do the mixes. The fee was really minimal, and Rich put the record out. He pressed blue vinyl, made it look like a limited edition. I was a test pressing nut, and if you really look at that, that even shows my power behind that even before I was there, because I'm a test pressing lunatic, and he made the label look like a test pressing. So he put it out, and it started to get this momentum, but it wasn't like a home run. It was like people were happy. It started to happen overseas, and then in the time from when he shipped the first copy, I was now brought into the company. And if you look at the timeline from when I got to the company, which I believe was April of that year, 95, to December, from April to December, the record was the number 2 record on the pop chart, because Mariah Carey and Boyz II Men kept it out for like 8 weeks with One Sweet Day. In Tracy Thorn's book, she gives me full credit as far as, but like I said, Rich Christina was the person that, he was basically, the guy, because he was the one who came to me and he was the one who initiated it. So, I mean, I always said we kind of did it together. It's that kind of thing. But what I did when I got to Atlantic was I serviced the record 4 times. I just kept going and going and going. And little by little, it was breaking barriers down. It was just growing and growing. All of a sudden, it's like, oh shit, this is something. And I got a call. My boss at the time in promotion, she pulled me in the office. She closed the door, and she was like, "What the fuck are you doing with this missing record?" And I'm thinking they're like, give me a right wing in the office building, like give me a promotion. They're like, we're about to drop this group, and this record is gonna cause so much trouble because now we're gonna have to re-sign these guys. So forget about the money they made with Missing from all my efforts, but they wound up getting another 3-year extension in advance, whatever. Ben he went from, I think he was playing around with Jungle or whatever, became a house music DJ, started a thing in the UK, Buzz and Fly, and started his label. It basically, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and take credit for the whole thing, but when you look at it, it's pretty amazing that that record took care of so many things. What it did for Todd was it put Todd through the roof, because Todd at that point was an underground guy. So he's making these incredible House of Gypsies, Royal House, all these incredible records, but they're underground. So guys like me and you and DJs all over, like, wow, Todd. Now this is like, oh shit, now he's on Cher's radar. So now Cher's coming out with the Believe record. Todd winds up producing cuts on that album. Todd's doing, Bitch, Meredith fucking whatever, I can't think of my name. He's doing uh Love Fool, Cardigans. All of a sudden Todd's in this pop world where he was kind of dabbling, but now he's the guy. So that record did so much for a lot of people. I got nothing from it. So, I got this interview. That's what I got. But everybody else was paid. Rich, God bless him, he got points or whatever because he was in fact the person at the company. So he got his thing. Ben and Tracy changed. They got added a couple of commas to their bank account. Todd went through the stratosphere. So I got to talk about it, which is good. I'm all good with that. But that's the story of Missing, and it's still a big record. I'm gonna backdoor into that later because there's something I wanted to talk about with Kenny, MK, and Armand, and how the three of those guys did more in our scene at that time than people realize. So we'll backdoor into that, at the end
Perfect.
of something.
Let's go back a little bit. When I think about that, when that remix came out, that was a game changer and it was everywhere. Um, let's talk about two things. One, it feels like these remixes came about because of two reasons. Opportunity. So you had the opportunity to connect the underground DJs with these pop artists, right? And you had the
Yeah.
opportunity to work at a major label, and also relationships, right? You had relationships with all these underground DJs. So let's
Yes.
talk about that. So um, how did you create your opportunity? Like, how did you get into the major label? How did you, get into that process of getting the remixes done? A, and then B, backstory in terms of how did you meet Todd Terry, and how did you develop that relationship to be able to say, Todd's the guy I want to do this remix?
So I was so I was, I've been DJing since 1979. So I was a kid. But I was very passionate, very serious about it. It wasn't just, get wrecked. Like it was serious to me. There was something, the whole looking at the pitch control, realizing that that means something, and putting records together. I can't stand that term beat match. Just mixing is what it is, and just I had this passion, and I would go to a lot of record companies and meet people. I was constantly networking, trying to meet people to see what's going to be the next. I didn't know where the connection was going to. I was in court stenography school, not knowing what my profession was going to be. Music was my passion, but I had no idea how I was going to get into it. And even though I had all these connections, I wasn't the type of person to say, "Hey, give me a job," or I'll work in the mailroom. Like I didn't even understand. It didn't even seem like a reality to me. I looked at people on that side of the business as the most fortunate, lucky people. I was like, "Wow!" Like you could be working at Citibank, cashing fucking checks, or you could be in this. And I got an opportunity. Tony Monty, who is basically, he and Vince Pellegrino ran SIN, Street Information Network. He and I got very close, and I was going up there for a couple of years, and he said, there was I got a job opportunity to go into the court system. The same day, Tony Monty called me up and said, "Hey, do you want to come work at SIN?" And obviously, I went to work at SIN, but I knew nothing about I didn't know about the intricacies of what I had to do. So it was a promotion company. And he sits me down, and now this isn't Tony Monty, one of my best friends. This is my boss. And he's like, first thing I want to tell you is the music business has got nothing to do with the music. And that was just a fucking blow. And I was just, you sit there and you're thinking, because what do? You look on the outside, you see the glamour, you see, oh shit, the this, the money, the all these other perks you get with it. You're backstage, you get all these things with it because people do think the music business is sexy. I mean, at the end of the day, now it's kind of everything's destroyed, but the entertainment business has always been that wow kind of a situation. So I start working there and I'm killing myself, but happily, like 12, 14-hour days, killing myself, just working. When I leave there, I go to the studio. Like I
Hang
said,
on one second. Hang on one second. Let's go back. You don't want to double click on what you just said. The music business has nothing to do with music. So explain that to people outsiders who aren't in the scene like us. Explain that what that means in English.
so what happens is you hear a record on the radio and you're like, wow, I love that record. Or you hear a record on the radio and you hate it, then you hear it so much that you like it. And you don't realize what that process was. You were just played, you were brainwashed. Promote Radio stations are not playing music because they like the music. Frankie Crocker back in the day, RIP, one of the few people, New York legend, WBLS, that was a guy that would just go to Harlem to get records off the street and put them on the air that day. That doesn't exist because money came in and destroyed it all. So when it became, hey, play my record because it's great, or play my record because I'm going to give you money, that's it. You're done. It's still to this day, the Latin community, it's all about cocaine and money. They're still running like it's 1975. They're on some major payola thing. In America, the way they got around it with Clear Channel, all these conglomerates, the trick is play the Jennifer Lopez record. That record sucks. Play it anyway. Nah, we really don't like that record. Oh, you need her to do Jingle Ball for the Z100 show for Christmas? Yeah, we really want her. Got to play the record. Yeah, we really don't want to play the record. We'll give you money. We can't take money. You know what? We're gonna make up shirts. Give us $10,000 to make shirts up. Get $10,000 from 5 people. That's $50,000 to make shirts that cost about $1 a piece. On the back of the shirt, like Jingle Ball, Jennifer Lopez, Miley Cyrus, Jonas Brothers. Put everybody's name on the fucking thing. There you go. So you just made $50,000 legitimately by getting. And they probably got the shirts free because they probably told the shirt company we'll put product of Hanes on the bottom. So Hanes gave them to them for free. So that's how the company just grabbed 50 grand. And the IRS could give a fuck. So that's what happened to the music business. I was at WKTU on the station as a DJ. I was doing the classic showcase from 7 o'clock every Saturday night. They did different stages. It was myself, Tommy Nappy, the Crooklyn Clan, which is incredible, Morales, Tiesto. It was a bunch of us from 7 at night till 5 in the morning, whatever it was. And I had incredible shit, man. Bucketheads, this, that. They didn't play shit of mine. Wouldn't play them. Then I had this guy, Mike Rizzo, that was like family with those guys, who was remixing all my records. Weren't playing any of them. One day they aired Stevie Wonder, What the Fuss, possibly the worst record ever made in the history of music. And Stevie would probably attest to that. I mean, the black stations didn't touch this piece of shit. But Sylvia Rhone at the time had left Elektra Atlantic. She became the head over there. She needed it on New York radio. So they added it. And I watched this stuff go. And that's where the music business has nothing to do with the music. And it's a horrible pill to swallow, but it's a reality and nobody ever talks about it. And it's been going on for years. I mean, in the payola days, that's just what it was. I mean, the book, The Hitman with Joe Isgro, the whole thing of that book is Pink Floyd is the biggest record in the world. They're in Los Angeles. Los Angeles isn't playing the record because they're not paying Joe. So Joe's keeping it off the radio. So The Wall never got played in LA. It's just the craziest thing in the world. So that's the music has got nothing to do. Music business got nothing to do with the music.
Fuck.
And artists come and go and they pay for it all. I don't, to this day, right now, I don't know why anybody would want to be on a major label. It just doesn't even make sense with the social media and stuff. You have a good enough social media presence. Having a major label just take their piece. What are they doing at this point? Everybody, the technology has moved so fast. I don't even see, you're not going to have a company catch up. And if you get a hotshot kid that happens to know social media and stuff, he's going to break off and become independent and just grab the money that way. So,
thanks for breaking that down. All right, so
yeah.
I detour you. Go back to the story about opportunity and how did you meet Todd? So you took the job at Sin. You left the
So I
courtroom.
took the job at Sin, and I had known these guys. So I had met Todd in the '80s. Todd's one of those guys that introduces everybody. For whatever reason, Todd is just, he was everywhere. And I met Todd in the latter part, maybe '87, '88. And he was just a very wired guy. I mean, everybody loves Todd. Todd was just that guy because he wasn't loved with the purists. I remember going to High Tech Records on Bleecker Street, which was Leroy Washington owned that, who was the DJ at Studio 54, and he was also the owner of Love Light, which was David Morales' first club. And the guys in there were Nick Jones and this guy Joe Warren, this other guy Victor. These were like garage head purists. And Todd's coming out with Bango, and he's taking all these disco records and he's fucking ripping them to shreds. Now, people like myself are loving him. all the Greedos of Brooklyn, like they're going crazy because he's like taking a record like Go Bang that nobody was touching Now he's making bango, and everybody's touching it. So Todd's brain was working, and you talk about like just connecting. Todd's connection was incredible. His timing and everything at that point, and he was one of the founders and godfathers of that whole sample movement. I mean, with an SB 1200, I don't think there's a person that's better than him and Kenny on the SB 1200. There's, I don't think the guy who built the machine had any idea that those two guys were going to do what they did to that. So yeah, so I met Todd then. I met a lot of people through Todd, and at the time we were hanging, and that was missing. It was just a conversation of you should. And he was kind of reluctant. He really didn't want to do it. It wasn't just the money. I just think he was. I mean, think about what he was doing at that point. But one thing people never discuss this either. If you listen to that drum track is River Ocean. People never talk about that. That's Kenny's drums. And then No Mercy, Where Do You Go, samples that drum. Kenny again on that record. Nobody ever discusses this. The Todd mix of Missing was successful, not because he did this spectacular job. He did probably one of the most minimal mixes of his career, but that's what worked. Now, did he do it because he was lazy and there was a little bit of money and didn't really give a fuck? He's not going to admit that 30 years later. But when you look back, it was the underproduction of that mix that sold it, because he gave it just enough for you to listen to the record. Tracy was the star of the song. And another thing nobody discusses, he actually fixed the part. There's a part of that record at the end where it kind of leaks. And Bill Klatt, I guess his engineer, was the one that actually tightened it up. So it's like she does this, this like weird ad lib that he took out. So that always impressed me more than anything, that he actually fixed that one part. So yeah, that's that. The
Incredible. All right, so that's that record. Before we go into other records, let's take a step back and go into remixes overall.
Yes.
Is there a remix era? And if so, when did it start? When did it stop, and why?
Absolutely. I would say the remix era was probably, I want to say, the 88, 89, when Michael Jackson had the In the Closet with Musto, and Remember the Time, Hurley, Maurice and East Smooth, CC Peniston. I think that's 89. I think 89, I would say you could probably go a 10-year period, go 89 to 99. I think after 2000, so many things changed in our entire scene. The remix thing was never as powerful. You could also look at it and say, how many records after 2000 in our world have actually moved on? And I say this constantly. There were very few. I mean, I don't even know any. I don't know any house records that broke from the underground the way all these records we're discussing broke and then went mainstream. I don't know of any. I think 2000. I mean, I had signed Kings of Tomorrow. Finally, I talk about that, but that didn't break big. That was an underground record. I don't know of a better record than that in the last 20 years. I think Finally is probably one of the last great records in
Tell us
our
about that story. How did you find them? How did you sign them? How did you know that that was the one?
Kings of Tomorrow. So what happened was Kings of Tomorrow was signed overseas to Distant and in France, and I was with Hex Hector. Hex Hector was playing in Manhattan at I forgot, it was a big spot in Manhattan on the West Side Highway. It was thousands of people, and I went. I think it was Valentine's Day, so I'm in the booth with him, and he's doing his thing, and he puts that on. I was like, "Yo, what is that record?" He's like, "Yo, this shit's hot." The next day, I reached out and I picked it up for America. I think I got another territory, but yeah, that was a Hex Hector turned me on to that record. Heard it the first time with him, I was blown away.
Let's go back to remixes. What is the relationship between an original record and a remix today?
Well, today with the technology, you can dissect the record, and you can just, you can press a button, have an instant acapella, instrumental parts, get rid of the drums. There's so much manipulation that can be done. I mean, we would have killed for this technology 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago. This was a dream in the 70s and 80s. Everybody always want an instrumental, want to have an a cappella just to do what we did. I mean, the funny part is the sample tracks that were big, especially most of them on my end, they were successful because all of the work that had to be done to strip down that record to get almost an a cappella or get a string part that's alienated. You know, now you just press a button. The funny thing is, with the technology coming out, I don't think there's been a good record in that world. It was when people had to use a lot more creativity. That's when it I always say that about Dimitri from Paris. I always felt that his re-edits are better than his remixes. Like, it's so funny. Like, you give him the parts, and there are a couple I do like a lot, but I enjoy his re-edits so much better. I just think that there's something that he does that's just, it's a little deeper. You know, I think it gets pretty when you have these parts and when you have everything in front of you. I also come from, how can you sit in front of a board of a Cerrone masterpiece and think that you're actually going to do something to that to make it better? That's the other part. Not everything could be remixed. That's another thing. You know, people, oh yeah, we've got to get this done. I would sit in meetings and tell people, I don't think we should touch certain things. And no, but we really need to get this. We need to get this in this area. And not everything should be remixed. I really believe that.
I love that. Um, let's go into terminology. You brought up remix versus re-edit. Um,
Yes.
technical question from your perspective, because you're the expert in this space. Today, what would you consider a remix versus an edit versus a mashup from your lens?
So a mashup, for the people that don't know. So that's just basically saying I'm going to take a Led Zeppelin instrumental and put Frank Sinatra on top of it and have two recognizable songs at the same time. Oh shit, Stairway to Heaven with New York, New York. Like, oh shit, like that. So that's what a mashup is. A re-edit is you're keeping the original parts of the record and just saying, let's put the bridge in the front, the break over here, extend the break, do the intro, and that's what that is. A remix, a proper remix, is when you have the actual parts. So if it's 8, 16, 32, 64, however many tracks they have, you could sit there behind the board or now on a computer and manipulate each sound. The hi-hat, the kick, the snare, the loop, the background vocal, the other background vocal, the main, the chorus, you can strip all of those things. So that's a proper remix when you have all those parts and those tools.
Super helpful. Thank you. Let's talk technically about the remix process. So you're in Atlantic. How does the process work? Like, you say you're commissioning Todd Terry or Armand to do a remix.
Yes.
Uh, you give them the parts? Do you give them the album? Say,
Well, before we even get to that, because that's the fun part. The hard part was being at a very rock oriented label at the time. Just to get these things off the ground was impossible. So just to get the approval, I never had the budgets of Sony and the rest of these big companies, where they would go to Morales and throw them 25, 30 grand. I would get, if I had $15,000 budget, I try to get 3 people for that. So there were more favors that were being done for me. There was actually an interview between Todd and Armand during the COVID bullshit, and they were both like kind of pissing on how much money they got from me. First of all, it wasn't my money, so it wasn't like, it was like, if I could have given them, if I was giving them money based on our friendships, they would have been millionaires in a week because that was very close to all those guys. That was purely my situation. Doing a Tori Amos remix, that's a lot of work to get that approved. That she's not in that world. Hosh Garelli, one of my good friends, was at Arista. This guy is just living the fucking life. Whitney, Toni Braxton, Deborah Cox. Everywhere he turned around, he's got these incredible artists. Clive Davis, who is a big fan of remixes, saying, here, get them done. Work with International. I was the guy in the company fighting to get a remix done, coordinating with the international department, speaking to the UK daily, because I was concerned and I knew on an underground level, I was smart enough to realize my records were not going to break here. They were probably going to break overseas and come back. And that's kind of a fucked up thing to know, that your job, and they loved me. I had the best, I probably had one of the best situations in the history of being in a record company, as far as people on my side and people patting me on the back. However, when you got a company that's got Hootie and the Blowfish and Matchbox 20 and Kid Rock, and that's where their money is, they're not checking for the bucket heads. So I had to do 10 times the amount of work of any of my peers, and I'm not complaining, but it was not an easy process. So getting back to your question, after I go through all of that bullshit, now regularly, if Toni Braxton wants a remix done, she has money that's allotted. So Toni Braxton, we gave her X amount of dollars. She's going to get this much for promotion, this much for marketing, this much for publicity, this much for the remixes. My company would never put money into the remix category because they just never really saw it as this viable place. So it was kind of like, oh yeah, Johnny D's in the corner, he's a dance guy. Like it was it was a little bit dismissive. It was, and like I said, I loved it there and the people were great, but it was kind of like they thought I was this weird fucking guy in the corner doing shit that really has nothing to do with the record. There was like this weird disconnect, which is crazy. A company based on Chic and Sister Sledge and this rich black music, all of a sudden they're just in a different direction. So after I go through this process of trying to get money, so my job, forget about the A&R process. Where am I getting the money from? Go to the A&R, go into the A&R department. We don't have money for that. What? No, we don't have any money for remixes. Go to promotion. Go to promotion. Oh no, we're not going to give you our budget. We need our budget for radio. Go to the video department. My saving grace at the company for almost all of these mixes was Vicky Gervais, who was the head of marketing, and she started a gay marketing department. We were the first company to have gay marketing, and she knew what's the quickest way to get to the gay community? Dance records. So she was my guardian angel, because whatever came through the door, she was pulling me in meetings. So if somebody gets called, I mean, there was some, other cases that happened, but most of the time, Tori Amos is a perfect example. That was a Vicky Gervais thing. John, should we do this? Blah, blah, blah. Without Vicky, that never happens. So I wound up finding money backdoor all the time. I was always, and I never had a lot of it. So I wasn't underpaying remixes because I was trying to be an asshole. I did not have the money. However, I was really good. I was probably the number one promotion person at the time. And my thing was, do this for me, and my efforts are going to do something for you. And when you look back between Kenny, Todd, and Armand, I mean, those three guys are fucking superstars. And whether they want to admit it or not, I'm the common denominator. So that's just the fucking reality. So yeah, they might have gotten less money here and there with different things, but what Tori Amos did for Armand's career, what Everything But the Girl did for Todd's career, you couldn't pay for that. Would you rather I give you $30,000 for a remix and nobody gives a shit? Get to 8,000, and now you're a fucking celebrity. Now you're producing share. I think it's a good investment, quite honestly. So that was so that's the process. So anyway, I got the approvals from wherever I get them. I then go listen to the record, probably on repeat 2 hours. That was my process. I listened to a record, just keep looping it in my head. And I'd always say, okay, I was always concerned about black and white. I always knew that, you have the gay crowd, you have the black crowd, and I always felt that if I did the black thing right, that's going to go overseas right away. So I tried to I always wanted to have a package. I didn't want it to just be, oh, that's just a gay record. I mean, certain records, if they lend themselves, I try to connect as many dots as possible. And after I get this idea, I then reach out to the people, the remixers. Listen, I want to send you this record. Let me know if you think you can do it. This is my budget. If I have $15,000, I'll give three guys $5,000 a piece. Let them know. I give them the track. They hit me back in a couple of days. Yes, no, whatever. Now, the hardest part of my job is, and this is where you can tell if an A&R person is bad, the recall. If I send the record out to you to get remixed and you send it back and we're way off, I didn't do my job properly. The way it should go is I send the track to eSmooth. He sends it back to me. Either I'm like, wow, incredible. Or you know what? Do me a favor, just fix this one part of 3 minutes. There's a weird thing that's not working out. That should be the extent of my job. I'm getting paid for me saying eSmooth is going to do this. If I got to go back and forth 10 times, then that's not the guy. And I got to say, I never really had, I had one problem, Felix the House Cat. I had one episode with Brandy, which was really strange, and I never understood how he didn't hear it. It was a weird record, and we went back and forth. Finally, the end result with that record was he said, listen, I'm not going to do anymore. You do what you want, but you have to give yourself credit on the record because I don't hear that. So the Brandy record, What About Us, is remixed by Felix the House Cat and Johnny D, because I don't know if you know the record, but it was like that. Timbaland was doing this. Dun, 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 dun. He did this really weird fucking swing. He was always experimenting. And it was an odd record. And for some reason, Felix wasn't hearing the one. So it should have been da, 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 boom, boom, da, 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 da. It was coming before. And he was doing da, 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 on the one. And I'm like, so anyway, that was one of those instances. But that's pretty much how that process works.
No, super helpful. All right, now.
Oh, and then I'm sorry. Now, okay, so that part's done. Now the real fun is now I get this mix. I have to send it to the now. Not all the time. Some artists will just say, Johnny D, boom, do your thing, or I have to approve it. That becomes a fucking problem because then, if I approve it and they don't, now I have to explain to them why it should be approved. I did a Roberta Flack record. I did her very best of greatest hits. And Roberta is probably my top 3 in the history of vocals. I love Roberta to death. And I didn't just go on, in some book and look at the top hits. I really put together, like I put it in a special order. And she called me up and she said, R. Kelly has this new album out and he did like verse 1, chapter 2, blah, 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 blah. I think we should do that with this. I said, Roberta, that's a fucking mistake. That's not going to work. She's like, what do you? I said, you know what? I'm going to send you over the CD of what I did. Listen to it twice. Go through it twice, 80 minutes. Give me fucking 3 hours. Listen to this twice. If you don't feel what I did, I'll do it your way. She called me back, do what you did. So you have to also stand your ground, and the man upstairs things have to line up. But that's something that A&R people don't do in the business. There's a lot of yes men in the business. If you have a situation and you can fix and help something, you have to fight for that, because the artists will use their power in their situation to get what they want, and they don't always make the right moves. A lot of the time they're out of touch. They're especially out of touch with the streets. I mean, if Roberta Flack, she's a bad example. She's kind of in the street. She knew more street people, but you can't expect Roberta Flack to understand what's going on in the clubs in the UK. It's just, and it's not her fault. It's just what it is. It is what it is.
Have there ever been instances where you commissioned a remix and the remix was banging and it never came out?
I think I gotta say, Junior Vasquez. I don't regularly mess with his sound, but I reached out to him to do a mix. We had Rod Stewart for a minute, and Rod Stewart, he did a record called Human. Probably one of Junior's best. I mean, Junior destroyed this record, and we didn't put it out because something weird happened. It wasn't about they didn't like the mix. It comes down to the money, because then there's even the other part. Okay, even if we pay for the remix, now you have to manufacture it, to press the records, the acetates, the mastering. You're pressing 3,000 records. That's $20,000 charge right there. So even little things like that, depending on on the scope of things, how they're spending money, that can get shut. So I think that's probably one that comes to mind. That Rod's doing.
So the big one, Tori Amos, Professional Widow. How did that record land on your lap? How did you get the opportunity to remix it? Talk about working with Armand. How long did that process take? Walk us through that from beginning to end.
Yeah, no, this is a great story. Tori Amos, I had never heard of her, and Vicky Gervais, who I discussed before, the head of marketing, she said, she said, I had this artist that I really think you could do some, you could really do stuff with her because she had this tremendous fan base, and she goes, we're gonna go for dinner, Dish of Salt, high-end Chinese spot in Times Square. So it was myself, Vicky Gervais, Tori, and at the time, her road manager, who became a road manager, English guy John Witherspoon. And we're sitting at a table. For some reason, I was in meetings all day and I was starving. So I didn't eat all day. So I get to this place and I'm fucking like, I just couldn't. I was just past this and like I'm like drinking wine and she just passes stuff and I'm just trying to So I said, listen, Tori, this is what I do. Worst case scenario, we'll press up 3,000 pieces of vinyl, and DJs who never heard of you would have now heard of you. That's the worst case scenario. That was my presentation to what I was going to do. Talked about my background, all this kind of stuff. We hit it off instantly, Tori and I. I go back, I get 20 cassettes. I got these cassettes, these are advanced cassettes. I send them to everybody. Junior, MK. I didn't send them to Kenny and Louie because, I mean, that's another thing. I mean, you got to really know your audience. And MK, this is where it's a funny tie. I was a tremendous fan of MK. When MK was doing his thing, I was just, you just have that connection. First time I heard him, I'm like, I get this guy. I was doing promotion for him without getting paid. That my boss would call me in the office when I was at Sin. They're like, yo, like, what the fuck is going on? And his management, MCT, used to call me. They were like, wow, like they knew I was literally on the phones promoting MK records for free. That's how much I connected with him. I had gotten really close with him and his brother Scott. Scott had done records on Henry Street as well. And I went to all these people. So I go to MK and I said, so he was one of the guys on the cassette. So when Armand at the time, I think he had done Old School Junkies for me on Henry Street and with the Work Me Goddamn, which was like a nice underground record. And I said, Armand, what do you like on it? And Armand was, I'll murder whatever you give me. That was what he said. So I said, this is great. Whoever is going to pick the single, Armand is going to be on the record as well because Armand is like, I'm going to do anything. MK is the guy who chose Professional Widow. So if it wasn't for that, who knows? So MK picks Professional Widow. I give it to him. He gives me back and he gives me and I had given MK Bette Midler mix before that. I wanted to bring him back. He was getting out of it. He was just about to go into the R&B world. He was working with Quincy Jones's son on the West Coast. He was kind of leaving house for a minute. And he was working with Tevin Campbell. I wanted to keep that MK thing going. So MK does the bet for me. He does the Tori Amos. Armand gets this. And anyway, getting back to what you asked for, I get the parts. It used to be a 2-inch tape. Then I got to a DAT. So I get all the parts separated and then send people DATs. And then those DATs, how people will put together the remix. Armand comes to my office. He calls me up. He goes, yo, I'm going to come up and bring the mix. At the time, my office was the size of a shoebox. And I was sandwiched between the heavy metal rock guy and the college radio AC chick listening to like some fucking Lilith Fair shit, okay? And I got these crazy JBL speakers. Armand comes in, he gives me the DAT. I put it in. Now, these people all know Tori Amos for years. She's on the label. I'm the only guy that know who the fuck she is. The whole gotta be big. Now, all of a sudden, I look up at my door and I have 6 heads looking in. They're like, mouths over. That Tori Amos? So I'm like, I'm probably going to get fired. It was like I offended these people. I can't imagine what it's going to do when Tori gets it. Now, Tori had been raped earlier, and she was behind this big campaign, Rain, about incest and stuff. And in the record, he pulls out honey, bring it close to my, honey, bring it close to my lips. It's got to be big. So I'm like, then I'm like, he didn't know any of that history. So now I'm like, as great as this track is, oh, by the way, let me get back to the A&R process. I will give myself a pat on the back. He's doing the record, and I said, you got to put a lot of vocals in this. I said, I don't know how offended. Is she going to get this? Who the fuck? I don't know if she's going to get these dubby things. He goes, it's not going to work. I told him, do a drop and put the whole vocal in. He goes, yeah, but what is a dance floor? Like, what if it just dies? We'll do a dub without it. If you look at that record, there's just a dub with no break and that drop. That drop, that song became the godfather of speed garage, as they call it, right? The speed garage anthem. 75 million people. He wound up that sound. He took that formula and did Sneaker Pimps, fucking the record on FFR, CJ Bolin, The Runaway New Eurekan Soul. He took that shit to another level. But it was the Tori Amos record, Professional Widow, that started that whole thing. Armand outdid himself on that record. So I have this thing, I have this mix. Okay. At the time, I had King Britt do mixes. I had a bunch of people do mixes. I have 10 mixes done off the Boys for Pele album. I sent her, I think 6 of them. I think I sent her a King Britt mix, a Fall to Lucifer. This guy Gavo did Horses in Canada. I think I did in the springtime of his voodoo. Whatever. Anyway, I sent her the Professional Widow separately on a cassette. I give her the MK mix and the Armand mix. 2 months go by, don't hear anything. I see Vicky Gervais in a meeting. I said, Vic, have you heard from Tori? She goes, no. I said, I guess she really wasn't feeling the mixes. A week later, I get a call from Tori. She's like, we're in a Germany on a bus. The bus broke down. I put the cassette in, and everybody's going crazy. We have to put this record out. So that was the approval for Professional Widow. I ran with it. It blew up, and it was it was her biggest pop record ever. It was #1. Right behind me, there's actually a letter from Max Hull, who's the head of Warner, and the chart, the #1 chart for 2 weeks in the UK. That was our biggest record. They stripped it on the album, and all the successes happened. And I'm at I'm in Chicago for some seminar, and I get a call from her manager, not John Witherspoon, who was at the dinner. Her other manager was managing her. I'm not going to mention his name. And he calls me, and I'm expecting him to send up strippers and some champagne to my room. And he's like, John, I think we have a problem. I'm like, what's that? He goes, I'm afraid Tori's fan base is, she's going to lose her fan base because of this record. And I think I was like, are you on fucking drugs? I'm like, people would kill to have a top 20 record. This is a #1 record 2 weeks in a row. It's the only record in the Warner family that's been Madonna. Nothing was touching that chart for like 3 years. Warner was the coldest fucking label in the UK in the world. And I'm like, this is the call I have. I was dumbfounded. Like, I was like, this fucking guy ruined my week. I'm like, he's like mad that she's getting, and also how much money is he getting from that shit? So that's the Tori Amos record. That was the whole thing. That's a still big record. You hear it around once in a while.
That's incredible, incredible. Let's tell everyone about the Jody Watley remix and how that came about.
Yeah, Jody's very, very personal, special to me. Rich Christina signed her to Atlantic, and when he told me that, I just couldn't wait to meet her. And the publicity department was like, you can't talk about Shalimar. She won't talk about Shalimar. There was a lot of shit going on between her and Howard and Dick Griffey and Solar and all kinds of shit. And we were deep in a Shalimar conversation in 3 minutes after I met her. Deep, deep. She knew right away I was a real deal. She left a voicemail for me like the next day. I remember calling my sister. I'm like, you got to listen to this. Listen to it. Just left me a voicemail. Jody Watley, like just hearing her talk. It's like everything she does is like a song. Like Jody, just her voice is just so crazy. And She was great, man. We did Off the Hook. I had Masters at Work and Soul Solution. Then I had If I'm Not in Love, 95 North. I think it was their first remix, and a bunch of other guys. She was just a pleasure. I also had Masters at Work produce, or Rich had Masters at Work produce I Don't Want You Back for the album, which was the Ramona Brooks cover, which I play on my station a lot, which is great. But Jody's the best. I love her.
Let's talk about one of my personal favorite remixes, the Braxtons.
Yeah, the Braxtons. That was a great situation.
That's
L.A.
fucking bananas, bananas.
That was, and they produced that too. So it was the album. That's the album version. What happened was L.A. Reid's brother, Bryant Reid, comes to Atlantic. Now Atlantic, like I said, I'm painting the picture. You know, they're not into this ritzy. You know, this is a working label. Bryant Reid walks in first day. First of all, they gave him the most incredible office. Only office in the building that had a balcony that brings you right to where the Christmas trees are. I mean, Joey Carvello had that office for years. The best office in the entire 75 Rock. They give him this office. I see him walking down the hall. He's got like a fur jacket. Like he is just the absolute opposite of what Atlantic Records was about. And at the time when he got there was something going on in my office where I wasn't in my where my office was going to be, so they put me in the black department, which was heaven for me. So I'm playing musical. So I love being in the urban department, and that's where he was. So I'm always playing Teddy Pendergrass wherever I'm playing. So he comes to my office one day, and we get tight. And like I see, I mean, he orders like $90,000 speakers. I mean, it was the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen in your life. And he goes, "Yo, you know, I'm bringing the girls here." Let me just get rid of this. I'm sorry. How do I get rid of this? All right. Uh, Sorry about that. So he goes, I'm bringing the girls over here. And I realized he was the guy who signed Toni Braxton to LaFace because he was doing stuff with his brother there. So he goes, I got the Braxtons, you know. So he kept talking to me about doing different things. Comes in one morning. He's like, "Yo, Johnny, you got to come to my office. Come to my office." Because I was just on the call coming in, and I heard the boss, "We got to do this record. We got to do it. Got to have the girls do it." So I thought of Kenny and Louie right away. I called them up, connected, and that was a beautiful situation. They did exactly. They had like I think Vince Montana got involved. That was really nice production and stuff. So yeah, that was that whole thing. I mean, and international level it did well. You know, in America it was hard because we really didn't break the Braxtons in America, so it was a hard time with the urban music at the company at that point.
And then talk to us about the end of the remix era. So you're in Atlantic, you could see things changing.
Well,
How did
where I really saw it changing was I realized the power that I had and Hosh had and Frank Serralo at Sony had. That power was when you got a record in the mail and it was, let's just say the Michael Jackson fucking Remember the Time. You saw Hurley, Maurice, and E Smooth. You, as a representation of the company, of Michael Jackson, of Epic, of the whole thing, you're saying this is what needs to be played. This is it. If you don't like Hurley, go to Maurice. If you don't like Maurice, go to East Smooth. If you don't like though, you got to figure it out because that's all you're getting. So you have to make that work. That morphed into anybody gets an acapella, everybody does a remix. Now you don't have a focal point. So on a promotion level, if you have 50 clubs in the country and those 50 DJs are playing for a couple of thousand people every night, and they have some kind of power and a little bit of know-how of how to make a record or put a beat underneath something, they could take this acapella, make their own version. The problem is you're promoting the record, but you're not promoting the sales because I want that version that the guy in Detroit is playing. Oh no, I want that version the guy in LA is playing. When I gave you that double pack that said you got to get East Move, Hurley, or Maurice, that's what's in the marketplace to buy. So you're giving the consumer, that's it. That's your option. Now the options are endless. Everybody with a phone or whatever can now do it. And I went through a process where when I did the Next Everything But the Girl album, I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do my remix packages, but I'm going to launch each record with an a cappella disc. So I'd put Temperamental on one side with the a cappella on the flip. So even though I was getting my own mixes done of it, I was giving people the option, and that was a mistake. Because I have guys coming over to me and they're like, yo, you got to check this mix out. This shit is hot. I was in the club Saturday. This thing was rocking. And I'm like, it's not on bar. Yo, this shit is hot. I'm like, they're not rocking to your beats. They're rocking because they know Tracy's voice. Missing is still so relevant that 3 singles deep with Temperamental or 5 Fathoms or whatever the fuck I was using at that time, she's still relevant. So people are rocking to her, not to your beats. And that I saw it all. That was the end. That was the end. Once the access was out there and it wasn't precious anymore, gone. That was the end of it. You can't do it. Listen, if you go to a store, if you go to a pizzeria, okay, and you're like, I want lobster. The guy could sell lobster, but how much lobster is a pizzeria going to sell? So now he has to have lobster on hand for when you come, but you might not come for 6 months. Now he's got to throw that out. If you kind of use that mentality, you can't, there has to be a control. You can't accommodate, it's just not possible. I could say I like chocolate, you like vanilla. It's just not possible. The best I can do is I'm giving you these 3 options. I can't give you 1,000 options. I'm going to give you these 3. And that's basically where it got out of control. Too many options, too many people in it.
No, that's super helpful. What's your perspective on the impact of remixes on club culture?
Well, I mean, obviously, club culture needed it. I mean, when you're on a dance floor and you want to hear just that, whether it's the bass or the pounding drums, whatever, I mean, it's just, that's, you need to have that. Boy George said something years ago that always stuck with me. I don't subscribe 100% to it, but I get what he's saying. He said when he's in a club, he doesn't want to hear anything either he's heard before or on the radio. He wants it to be specifically tailored for that club, and I get it. Now I kind of like to. I play music. I don't play sets. I don't just like I like the element of surprise. I'll do different things here and there. Um, I like to throw that pop record in that you're not expecting. Like I think that's cool to do that if it's the right time and everything else. If you're reading the crowd, and obviously they're not all home runs. I mean, a lot of time you try something that doesn't work, you gotta have that backup plan. But yeah, as far as the remixes and stuff, the clubs with the sound systems and everything, that's really what it's about. And then also you got to factor in the drugs and the alcohol. How much of that is even being, how many people are remembering the next day? It's that constant pounding. I mean, I remember going to Jonathan Peters' club. Uh, he had just done Donna Summer for me. And I mean, everybody, I don't know what the fuck they were on. It was zombies walking around, and he was just pounding. And, I walk out of a place like that, and I'm just like, I don't come from that. So it was very, very hard to fathom that this is enjoyable. It was all around, it seemed pretty crazy.
Have you ever commissioned a remix that flopped?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've had the favorite one I ever did probably sold 6 copies. It was a Jordan Hill record. She was signed by David Foster, which the highlight was I got to meet David Foster and Babyface on a conference call complimenting me, which was great. And I had done this remix of "For the Love of You." Had Toni Moran reproduced the vocals. Tommy Muscle did a great underground mix, but Tony's pop mix to me, one of my favorite records I've ever done. And Ahmet Erdogan, chairman of Atlantic, legend, said this is better than anything on the album. He stripped the dance version on the album, And she didn't even thank me, which was a lot of fun. I broke my ass on that record, and I think it sold 3 copies. But that's like my favorite thing I've done.
Well, that was actually my next question was, um, which remix project are you most proud of?
Well, I did a thing called Everybody Dance, which was a remix compilation through Rhino. I was doing Rhino as well as Atlantic, and historically, it's probably it's in the books as far just what I pulled off. David Morales, Masters at Work. I put Pal Joey Dance on there. Arif Marden revisiting Rocksteady. Nikki and myself did Hijack and uh, Soul Makosa. Uh, Jesus, I mean, it was Todd did You Were in My System and yes, Owner of a Lonely Heart. Musto did Weekend Freak. Morales did Can You Move? I just that was such a beautiful, and that was before people were pulling tapes. I was one of the first guys to do that, and Jazzy Jeff doing Good Times, cutting shit. I mean, that was a great situation. Really was great. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you.
Ugh.
And then you said you wanted to make a broader connection between like Kenny and Armand and MK and sort of the bigger.
Yeah, I thought of this yesterday. I said, it's a funny thing. Kenny does River Ocean drums. Todd takes those drums for Missing. No Mercy takes the Missing drums for What Would You Do? Armand makes Hey Baby, which is at the time my favorite record on the label. I play it for Kenny. He makes The Bomb. Same structure, like Armand did this thing in the beginning with the guy talking. Kenny did the same thing. All right. MK picks Professional Widow, which if he didn't pick that track. So I just felt that that's a back thing to those three guys as far as it was actually. Oh, I'm sorry. And Kenny's drums of Trey Lorenz are what Ralphie took on Reel to Reel. I Like to Move It. So Kenny is on all of those records, which is crazy. And Kenny's never even discussed it. That's pretty deep.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, Kenny's the through line through everything.
Yeah, it's wild. It's crazy.
What's next for Johnny D?
Still doing the label, doing records. I got my station, which put a lot of effort and love into the Johnny D experience. I got this book, which I'm just have to edit, which has been taking a long time because I wound up doing all of this information, and now to get the right edit, the chronological, just in my head, it's overwhelming to kind of revisit. There's a part of me that's like, what if I just start from scratch and try to fill in the blanks and stuff, which would be triple the work. So I'm trying to talk myself into for 2025 how I'm gonna reach the finish line. I want to go into you didn't mention BeBe Winans. Thank you. BeBe Winans. Thank you. Um, was kind of a crazy one that came about where Craig, who was the head of the company, I reported to him for A&R and Andrea for promotion. He would Craig was infamous to just put you on the spot, and he doesn't do it on purpose. This is just how his brain works. So I was on a conference call on a Tuesday, which was a promotion call, and my assistant says Craig's on the phone. So I pick up the phone, and he's like, "Johnny, you're on with BeBe," and I'm like, I'm having like what? And I'm a tremendous BBCC fan, right? And BB's being the biggest prick. Like, yeah, yeah, like totally. I'm like fucking blowing this guy, and he's just like shooting me down like I'm an asshole. And I'm on the phone. I'm like, I can't believe like I love this guy, and he's just pissing on me. I just and then he's like, so Craig's like, listen, Johnny's gonna put together a plan, and this was not planned. Like this was Craig throwing me in the fucking ocean, swim. So now I got to read this call, but now there's also the Brooklyn in me that like I'm gonna tell him to go fuck himself if he keeps pushing me, because at the end of the day, we all have blood, we're all breathing, So now he's kind of being an asshole, and I don't want any of that gay shit. This is what he tells me, right? So now I'm like, that kind of fucked me up, the whole Christian background, gospel. So I said, all right, listen, this was exactly what I said. Listen, I got 2 guys in mind. We're going to have a meeting. If it works out, great. If it doesn't work, we're not going to do it. Call up Kenny. I said, listen, I got the situation. BeBe Winans. Let's have a meeting. We have the meeting. BeBe winds up being I love BeBe. Winds up being the greatest fucking guy. Like wired. I call him Black Mafia. Like literally, guy was wired to everybody. And go in the studio. So now Kenny and Louie produced the album version. People don't realize it's not just that dance mix. They produced the album version. And then we're doing the remix. So I go to the studio. So I walk in, and BeBe's sitting there eating his Caesar salad, and he goes and does a take, and it's one of the best vocals I think I've ever heard of. This guy's vocals are ridiculous. Goes and kills it. Comes back listening to it, eating. Goes back in. He recalled himself 5 times. Each layer, one better than the next. I'm looking at him. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like crazy. Yeah. Gets on the phone. Yeah. All right, boom. Hangs the phone up. 20 minutes later, who walks in? Luther Vandross and Fonzie Thornton. So now, and this chick, I forgot who the girl was. So now, Kenny, no, we didn't know this was happening. This was just, he needs background vocals on his dance mix. Now, Luther Vandross is in the fucking, oh my God, Luther's in the booth, and then, beep, oh, thank you, like fucking crazy. So now Luther he just got dropped from Epic. He's on Virgin, who produces All You Using Me, Masters at Work, Johnny D-Link. I never get a thank you or a pat on the back. So that's how that happens. I got to meet Luther and hang with him in the studio. So that was my payment there, which I was happy for. Obviously Luther's Luther, but that was and thank you. I mean, BeBe, one of the best, man. Nobody. I mean, I know he and Louie are still. I haven't spoken to BeBe in years, but I know he and Louie still in touch. He's still doing his thing.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a crazy one.
Mic drop. Crazy.
That's a crazy one.
Crazy.
Luther walking in was like, you're not expecting that, and then I'm like watching him it's just like, wow, I'm watching Luther work right now. My whole life, like that's a guy like from the 70s, and all of a sudden I'm like, he's behind the glass right there. He's telling me, I remember I was at the studio when Kenny and Louie were doing All You Using Me. I had him sign a whole bunch of my albums and stuff, and he's sitting there and he goes, Johnny D, let me tell you, I have weight issues. He goes, when you sit down on a Sunday, you have 1 bagel. I says, yeah. He goes, I have 12. He goes, that's how my body works. He goes, like, I go up and down. And he was like talking about, he brought it up like it was just out of nowhere. I think I did a little Never Too Much in front of him. That's one of my records I don't do karaoke, but I would do Never Too Much. I think I did a little for him.
That's awesome. What an incredible way to end the interview. Thank you so much. This was fantastic.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.